Patch 10.5 has finally dropped, and we've got some time to get a couple of preliminary statistics in. So now today we're talking about our tier lists. Let's not waste any time, so smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. First things first, let's get a quick review of the rules that we're talking about here. It's important to point out, champions are ordered from top to bottom, so the further you go down the list, the harder the champion generally becomes. This list also isn't based completely on how we feel and predict things are going to go on the patch. We also use statistics to inform where things are going. I've noticed a couple of you guys complaining about our placements in the past, like with say Kiana, and let's face it, Kiana's win rate worldwide in Platinum and below is below 48%. That is just not an S tier champion in any way, shape, or form. That aside though, we'd love to hear what you guys think, so make sure you comment below if you think that we've rated a particular champion wrong. We're always improving this list as we move forward, so we will always take into account what you guys point out to us. Alright, enough of this rules crap, let's jump into the mid lane tier list. Somehow, somewhere, a Rioter is sitting at their desk and thinking, Diana's rock steady 53% win rate for 5 patches is totally fine, we're not gonna touch her, because Diana is still a broken tier champion. But our other broken tier highlight from mid lane, Mordekaiser, has found his way coming back up from S tier. He's gonna be our broken tier highlight, and that's because we want to break down why he suddenly becomes strong. While yes, Mordekaisers do appear to be building differently, going for Protobelt and then Liandry's as their first items rather than Rylai's and Liandry's, that isn't really that big of a factor. What's more important is the overall shift in meta that's taken place. Tanks are a lot more common, and with damage dealers being fewer in between and people who can't really kill Mordekaiser being more common, well, you see why he'd be more popular and stronger now. Dropping down into S tier, you're going to notice a lot of strong champions who have ways to deal with both squishy and tanky champions. However, our highlight here is going to be Pantheon, as he is a champion who is very effective at shutting down high damage dealers in the mid lane. Really right now, damage dealers are only present mostly in mid lane and in the AD carry position. Mage supports and fully offensive top laners or junglers aren't too popular right now, given a few exceptions. And even if they were, Pantheon's ability to just take somebody in a lane and beat them to the point where they're completely useless and then use his ultimate to destroy somebody else's lane is incredibly invaluable no matter where the damage dealers are. And I mean, let's face it, if you've only got a damage threat in mid lane and bot lane and Pantheon absolutely annihilates the mid laner and then man drops on top of the AD carry's face 6 times in a row, the game's probably over. Taking another step down now into A tier, you're gonna see some champions who do have, CC, a little bit of damage, ways to deal with some tanks. Maybe they're not super consistent or something like that, but our highlight here is gonna be Neeko, as she received a lot of buffs this patch. She got buffs to both her AD build and her AP build, and overall it just helps her with CSing, with fighting, with trading, and bursting in team fights. Everything is just better for her, and because of that, she's moved up and is A tier right now. Hopping on down to B tier, let's point out Zoe here because she demonstrates a lot of what B tier champions are about right now. They are less consistent, and so here I'm going to draw a parallel between Zoe and Pantheon. Pantheon is a very consistent champion. It's difficult to miss with all of his abilities, and there's no real RNG baked into his kit. However, Zoe, you RNG your items from your W passive and your summoner spells from your W passive. Your enemies can play around that and choose to hold them and force you into horrible positions. And on top of that, people can block stuff like your Q or your E. Despite her inconsistencies, Zoe has incredibly high highs, and getting that one EQ onto a carry can easily just blow them up instantly, and then you just take whatever you want from there from the enemy team if they don't have enough damage left. Jumping another peg down, we're gonna highlight Azir because he's been benefiting greatly from a new build revolving around the Hail of Blades buffs. While he definitely is more powerful in the early game, it's nothing super crazy. However, it is enough to get him up another tier as he's able to somewhat more reliably get into the late game where he's a powerhouse. For our last tier, let's just take another look at Akali. Notice that her win rate is still like 42%. And move on. With mid lane done, let's jump up to the top lane where all the meat men thrive. Tanks are still looking mighty fine, but with the nerfs to Ornn, Darius is gonna be the sole leader on this patch. Darius seriously destroys tanks. Like, that's an understatement to say he destroys tanks. He can heal off of them very, very consistently, has amazing long trades against them, and can easily force them into an awful position to the point where they just get snowballed on and killed repeatedly. Jumping down into the S tier, as Darius is the sole winner here in top lane, let's take a look at Jax and the other champions in this tier. A lot of the bruiser items were buffed, and because of it, a couple of them are seeing movements up in the tier list. Jax being the main one here, as he utilizes all all 3 of the items in several of his builds. Ravenous Hydra, Blade of the Ruined King, and Titanic Hydra are all viable choices on Jax, and with each one of them being stronger, all the situations that he would build them in are now just better for him. Because of changes like this, a couple of tanks have moved down a tier, but not that many, as they still will absolutely have a stronger early game and teamfight presence even when the enemies have those items. Much in the same vein, our A tier highlight is going to be Irelia, as the Ravenous Hydra changes really help her if she's trying to build lifesteal and sustain in a side lane. And on top of that, the Titanic buff just makes her do more damage if she doesn't feel like she needs lifesteal. Who knows, with these changes, I mean, Triforce Black Cleaver was already a good build on champions like Jax and Irelia. Maybe we see some more innovation, maybe they go like Black Cleaver Blade of the Ruined King for some reason. Who knows? Jumping down in the B tier for top lane, we're going to be highlighting Neeko again. As we all probably remember, Neeko was an absolute terror in the top lane before they nerfed her on-hit build. Even after that, Glacial Augment Neeko top still saw play, and it was incredibly annoying. Hopefully Riot watches out on this really closely, as I'm sure none of us really want to have to deal with more ranged champions cheating in the top lane. Jumping down to C tier, let's talk about Cassiopeia, as a lot of champions right now have a lot of dashes, and if you do have a Cassiopeia on your team, you can shut them down really effectively. One well-placed W from a Cassiopeia can easily shut down any of the mobile AD carries or mobile junglers right now. The key with her is that you really have to play the early game and even later stages of the game pretty much perfectly, otherwise you're gonna have a bad time. For our D tier highlight, we're gonna point out Wukong, as this champion right now may not be all that great for the top lane, as he actually is better mid, and even then he's still not particularly amazing because he takes so long to scale. Riot's rework for Wukong is coming on 10.6, or at least that's what they're promising. And oh man, we've done a video on that rework already, and they're buffing him even more. Watch out for next patch, as we're gonna have people chimping out in more ways than one. Speaking of chimps, a lot of people feel like they get dragged down by their teammates in League. And while there definitely is some validity to that, thinking about it that way is not the best mindset to have if you're trying to improve and win your games. For the best information and the real stuff that teaches you and improves your gameplay, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. Your teammates have absolutely no influence over how you improve, and when you get to the point where you can carry 4 Iron players playing Ryze, Azir, Akali, Aurelion Sol while being blindfolded, it's not gonna matter what teammates you have. We have tons of guides all made by challenger level players on everything from the basics down to the nitty gritty champion specifics. So no matter who you're trying to carry or what you're trying to do, make sure you go check it out to get yourself to improve. Now comes my favorite part of the video, the Bush Boys. Let's talk about the jungle tier list. Our top 2 right now are Trundle and Zac, as these meaty dudes have a lot of tools to deal with everybody else who's very good right now. Trundle is pretty much the tank who beats other tanks because he gets to steal their health and resistances. That's an S+ from us. Zac, on the other hand, basically has infinite health as long as you can hit people with abilities and pick up your bloblets. And the fact that his 4,000 health bar kind of behaves like a 7,000 health bar because of that, that's ridiculous. Moving into S tier though, let's talk about Vi, as Vi's a really cool champion who's seen some buffs indirectly and directly. She's a bruiser, but also a tank, and also very good at diving the backline, but also very good at dealing with other tanks who can do that as well, and so, like, thinking about that for a moment, she's actually pretty good right now. She is an excellent champion for disruption, and because of that, combats everything that other similar tanky champions and divers want to do. And of course, you know, she can one-up most other people with her passive, giving her tons of shielding on top of her W passive, which gives her attack speed, armor shred, and access to more shielding. Oh yeah, and if all that didn't sound good enough, she sometimes buys Titanic Hydra, and that item just got buffed, so expect her to be pretty damn good right now. Our A tier highlight is going to be Mordekaiser, as he's one of the champions who Riot has just been consistently buffing in the jungle, and because of that, his clear is actually looking really disgusting, and that alone in this kind of meta will put you above most other champions. And right below Mordekaiser, for the same reasons mostly, is Garen. His clear really got improved by the changes that they gave him, and because of that, it's actually enough to the point where he's not awful. Just don't be surprised when your ganks might feel a little bit lackluster, as Garen really doesn't have that great of a gank. Hopping down once again, we have another champion who Riot is trying to shoehorn into the jungle as a highlight, and that is Gnar. The reason why Gnar is so low compared to everybody else on this list is that he's very risky to play, because if your timing is off even just a little bit, you're gonna have a bad time. Being forced into Mininar in a situation where another enemy jungler tries to like contest the Scuttle Crab with you is actually the worst thing possible. Stepping down to our last tier, our highlight here in D tier is gonna be Qiyana. And this is to say that you should not play Qiyana jungle. Literally, that champion has disappeared off the face of the planet since patch 10.3 in the jungle. And the last thing that we have statistic-wise on Qiyana jungle is this. Don't do it. With the Bush Boys wrapped up, let's hop into the bot lane. Just when we all thought that Senna might actually be dying in the AD carry role, some innovation brought her right back into broken tier. Fasting Senna is not balanced. If you don't happen to know what fasting Senna is, I can give you a quick explanation, but it really would warrant like a full video. Essentially, you don't farm and focus completely on harassing your opponents while you have a tanky champion with Relic Shield splitting CS with you. Miss Fortune also still is contesting Senna as the two broken champions here at the top of the list, as she is naturally very good into Senna. Hopping down into S tier though, let's talk about Kog'Maw for a minute. This champion really seems to be flying under the radar, but has a very good win rate. And I mean, it kind of makes sense. He's got great range and a lot of health damage. Very few AD carries actually have percentage-based maximum health damage. Kog'Maw and Vayne are the main two that come to mind. With a very interesting shift in the supports that are popular right now, which we'll talk about later, Kog'Maw has the ability to safely poke at and destroy tanks over and over again. Of course, it's not just the supports though. When you have these situations where it's big tank versus big tank, you know, the team that has the Kog'Maw who just gets to free hit the enemy will shred through them way faster. Moving down into A tier, let's take a moment to talk about Yasuo and why he's so powerful in the bottom lane. When you have all these champions who rely on incredibly powerful, short duration ranged abilities, like Miss Fortune or Kog'Maw and those sorts of champions, the amount of value that Windwall has is absolutely insane. Being able to block all the incoming damage from impactful ultis or impactful empowered auto attacks is huge. The fact that it's annoying for the rest of the team to deal with is also just a bonus at that point. Jumping another step lower, let's talk about Kalista and why she's stronger right now. Those Halo Blade buffs are really doing a number for her, and with the shift in supports and the popularity of other champions all around the game being more towards tanky champions, Kalista is able to enjoy shredding through those characters way more now. Granted, there are situations still where she'll be able to just get blinked out of existence by somebody, say like a Talon, but those are less common than they were before. Jumping into C tier, let's talk about Xayah, because Xayah is a special champion where she's a lot stronger when she's combined with the Rakan, but her on her own, we feel comfortable putting her in C tier because she's not the strongest champion right now, but she definitely is not the worst. Meta-wise overall, she can struggle against really big tanks, and especially so when the enemy team has a lot of CCs and she just can't avoid them all by using her ultimate. Lastly in D tier, we have Corki, and then we think about Corki, realize why is Corki on this list, then think, oh yeah, Corki is awful, maybe we should remove him and move on. With the AD carries wrapped up, let's talk about supports. Nami and Nautilus might not come as too big of a surprise, but Maokai being broken tier? Let's talk about that one real quick. We actually did a video that mentioned exactly this, and there's a Maokai build and playstyle that's been gaining tons of popularity recently, and it seems like now it's hitting that breakpoint. He is the highest win rate champion on the patch for support right now, and in the past we've seen tons of players individually reach staggeringly high win rates on this champion in support. The main key to Maokai support is the fact that he has insane lockdown and has free wards on his E. Literally, you just get a ward that lasts like over a minute that if somebody steps near, loses like 20% of their maximum health. That's just dumb. Like really, let's say if a Maokai and his team are trying to do Dragon, right? And he throws a sapling in the river bush next to mid lane, and then the pixel brush in the river, and then after the one in the pixel brush gets detonated, he throws another one in there? How do you get by that without losing 60% of your health? And the answer is, you don't. Obviously, if it was really that broken, Maokai would be like 60% win rate, right? But the fact is that you don't really get that amazing scenario 24/7 in every game, right? Sometimes you're just not fighting around bushes, and sometimes you don't have objective control. That being said though, when you do have that little bit of extra time to prepare for an objective and you do have that sort of control, it's incredibly difficult to break the stranglehold that Maokai has over that match. Jumping down into S tier, we're gonna talk about Sona, as they reverted a lot of the nerfs that they gave to her because of the top lane worries that they had with support item top lane champions, and then on top of that they kept in the buffs that they gave her already. So with all of that happening, Sona should be an excellent champion right now. Her mana costs are lower, her damage is the same, and her movement speed is higher. Next tier down, let's talk about Galio, as he's recently been gaining popularity and strength in this role as people figure out the builds on him. Of course, he's not an easy nor simple champion to play, as he plays very differently to most other champions in the game, let alone other supports. But having 2 knockups and a taunt is really hard to deal with, not to mention bringing some of the base damages of a more tanky mid laner to the mix. Moving his way into the B tier, let's talk about Alistar, as he recently got buffs on this patch. The changes to his passive are really important, as they affect everything that he wants to do in long-term scenarios. Big, long, drawn-out fights where there's minions or monsters nearby, that got buffed. His early game, that got buffed. Sieges where minions die left and right, that got buffed. Every scenario that you could possibly want to play this champion in got better, and that's why he's moved up, and that's why he's our highlight here. Moving to C tier, let's briefly talk about Ziggs, as this champion in support might be more powerful than most people realize. He's able to actually destroy a tower before the last plate is broken in the early game, and that's very strong. You can easily get all 15 tower plates taken in the early game with a Ziggs support. And then lastly, sitting by himself, sad and alone in the middle of the river of D tier, is Tahm Kench. Please do not pick this champion unless you are duo queue with your AD carry and you are both very good at the game. This champion is really just awful in any other scenario. He requires incredible senses of timing and coordination from both players involved here. It's really not a good idea to play this guy as a support. If you want to play him, probably go top lane instead. But if you do have that one person who you duo queue with and you guys just have that connection where you know the plan, you know exactly what you guys want to do, Tahm Kench is incredibly powerful. Being able to save somebody just in the nick of time without disrupting their thoughts and how they're planning and how they're going to play out the rest of the fight is so powerful. And with that, that's all of our tier lists for patch 10.5. To learn more about the champions that we covered in this video, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have tons of guides up there on champions and on stuff other than champions too. We've got stuff covering basic skills and guides for every single lane and role. So if you want something to improve, make sure you go check it out, as there's definitely something up there for you. On top of that, everything that we have is done by challenger level players, and we're always trying to make more and better content for you guys to give you guys the best advantage that we possibly can. If you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. What do you guys think of the tier list? Do you think that we did somebody really unjust and made them way worse than they really should be on the tier list? Let us know. Anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.